It's chaos.
It's a different type of Sunday scary.
It's your newest obsession.
It's Dirty Driving, a Formula One podcast.
We're the Hornsby sisters. I'm Katie.
And I'm Megan.
This weekend was the Qatar GP in Doha at the Losail International Circuit. The 57-lap race was the finale of the late-season triple header. We saw Yuki bend it like Beckham. We saw the actual David Beckham. We saw sparks, we saw sand, dust, and tire explosions. Qatar was a time. And I'm not gonna lie, I was nervous going into this inaugural race, but it definitely turned out better than most of us thought. The track was fast and had many opportunities for overtakes than what was originally predicted. I'm gonna keep this short and jump right into a track refresher. This race was the first and maybe the only race to ever be hosted at the Losail International Circuit. As it was designed as a motorcycle racing track, it is a fast, flowing track with over 1 kilometer of the track making up the main straight into turn 1, giving us the one and only DRS zone. Due to the high speed and flowing corners, overtaking was difficult, but we really knew that and understood that going into the weekend. Formula One will not race in Qatar in 2022 due to the country hosting the FIFA World Cup. We are supposed to host another race here starting in 2023 at a potential new track. This is the 33rd sovereign nation to host a Formula One race since the World Championship started in 1950. This weekend in Qatar, we had another Lewis Hamilton victory. Losail is the 30th track that Hamilton has won a race at, which is an incredibly impressive as he has raced at 35 different tracks. He is the first driver to set this record. Hamilton started from pole on Sunday and has now taken pole at the latest 3 new Formula One venues, the 2020 Mugello and Portimao, and now the 2021 Losail. He is also now tied at 102 victories and 102 pole positions. He is masterclass. Max Verstappen took home 2nd place and Fernando Alonso took home 3rd place with his first podium since Hungary in 2014, which was before Max Verstappen even started racing in Formula One 7 years ago. Going into the race, only 2 of the 20 drivers had ever raced on this track. We had Sergio Perez, who apparently, per Christian Horner, had to be reminded of the experience with pictures, and then Nikita Mazepin, who raced here during an MRF challenge. And due to the triple header, many did not have much time to prepare for this track. We saw this in interviews after Brazil when the commentators asked which direction turn 1 went to, and most of them couldn't tell you if it was left or right. So let's start with Friday because Pierre Gasly showed up on Friday. Pierre set the 2nd fastest time of Friday, going P2 in both practice sessions. In FP1, he was 4/10 off of Red Bull's Max Verstappen, and in FP2, he was 2/10 off of Mercedes' Valtteri Bottas. Tsunoda also had a very impressive showing, rounding out AlphaTauri's Friday. He went 5th fastest in FP1 and 7th fastest in FP2. Franz Tost, their team principal, was very confident going into both Saturday and Sunday, and he said that the AT02, which is the car they're currently driving, is the best car his Faenza factory has ever produced, and believed it is fast enough to complete his lifelong goal of securing 5th in the Constructors' Championship. Saturday qualifying was a little dicier. There was a shock in Q2. Charles Leclerc had horrible damage caused by his terrible performance of running all over the curbs. The runover of the larger curbs required him to need a brand new chassis. And at the end of Q3, Pierre Gasly suffered a tire puncture which caused yellow flags. It would ruin everybody's flying lap behind him, including Verstappen, who was trying to catch Lewis Hamilton for pole. Post-qualifying, Verstappen, Bottas, and Sainz were all called to the stewards. Verstappen for ignoring double yellow flags, and Bottas and Sainz for ignoring yellow flags. Single yellow flags, that is. So again, the FIA would fuck around with everyone and delay making a decision until Sunday afternoon. So ultimately, Verstappen would receive a 5-place grid penalty and Bottas would receive a 3-place grid penalty. Sainz did not receive anything, I believe just a quick warning. The stewards did have sympathy for Max Verstappen because there was a lack of display of the yellow light panels, there was no dash warning lights, and there was no audio signal to the driver. Ultimately, it's the driver's responsibility to take the appropriate action when entering what is a double yellow flag area, so it caused a little bit of a debate. And because of both of the penalties, the starting grid for the top 4 had 4 different teams, which is essentially what we want to see in F1 because it really gives us no clue who is going to win that race and who's going to be on podiums. So Lewis Hamilton was on pole. He had a fantastic flying lap in qualifying on his old power unit, so not the new engine that we saw in Interlagos. And this is all part of Mercedes' strategy to give him 2 working power units for the last 2 races of the season. Pierre Gasly was on the front row next to Lewis Hamilton in second, Alonso was in third, and Norris was in fourth. We saw a wonderful tweet from our old F1 friend Roman Grosjean, who said that Pierre Gasly's front row start is the 200th time that a French driver will start on the front row of an F1 race. So a nice little stat and remark from our old friend. In fifth, we had Carlos Sainz next to Valtteri Bottas. Max Verstappen was in seventh, with Yuki Tsunoda in eighth. And the top 10 rounded out with Esteban Ocon in ninth and Sebastian Vettel in 10th. Sergio Perez sat in 11th place. We saw Hamilton have a fantastic start to the race. Alonso was able to get into second around Gasly, but not before he had this racy defense moment, which caused Max Verstappen to run off track. Eventually, Max Verstappen made it from P7 to P2 after just 5 laps, so we saw impressive driving. Pierre Gasly fell down the grid, so did Valtteri Bottas, and then we had Sergio Perez starting to make his way up to the front. The biggest thing to come out of this race were the tires were being physically eaten up by the track itself. Pirelli brought their 3 hardest compounds to Qatar, knowing that going into the weekend, the teams were concerned about the high level of tire degradation, paired with general concerns about the lack of data on these tires because this was the inaugural race. After Friday's practices, Pirelli warned the teams about a one-stop strategy, saying that that was not going to be the best type, and they suggested a 2-stop strategy. We had plenty of tire punctures throughout the race. It started off with Valtteri Bottas in lap 30. He had a tire puncture. He ran off track. He was able to get back on track, back to the pits. New front wing, new tires, and it was a warning to everyone else that a one-stop was going to be hard and that the tires would not last, which essentially pushed all of the strategists on every team to figure out when is going to be the right time to pit. We saw 2 punctures within Williams, one for Latifi and one with Russell. Latifi was out of the race. Russell was able to make it back to the pits. And then Lando Norris and McLaren got a little nervous. They suspected a tire puncture, so they brought him in, and he fell back through the grid as well. I definitely want to dive into more about the tires with Megan, but it's clear that the track completely ate up the tires, and the teams really did not listen to any of the advice that Pirelli gave them going into the race, with both the Alpines, the Ferraris, and Mercedes with Bottas and McLaren. So, it was a whole blunder because no one was really listening. Going into the last laps of the race, we had a possibility of a solid scrap for 5th place. It was a 4-way in the last 4 laps, and we were denied that chance by that virtual safety car after Nicholas Latifi ran off track and his car needed to be removed. But the chances for that solid battle between the drivers were there. We just unfortunately missed out on it. Esteban Ocon came out and had a solid performance this race. Alonso requested that Esteban hold up Perez, and he even said over the radio, "Tell Esteban to defend like a lion," while Fernando was in P3 and Esteban was in P5. Ocon and Perez had a great fight. It was probably the best they could have had with Ocon in a slower car and on older tires. It was a great battle. He really put his elbows out, and it was some solid wheel-to-wheel action. Lance Stroll had a freaking great race. He had his best performance of the year to finish P6, and it was just, there's not much to say about it other than it was a perfect race. Moving on to Leclerc and Ferrari. Ferrari was not a winner, but simply a survivor this weekend. Leclerc was able to finish ahead of McLaren, but out of the top 6, which was great considering Leclerc started in the position of P13. They are now 40 points ahead of McLaren, and they successfully completed a one-stop, while other teams had massive issues. I think we have the safety car to thank for their ability to finish that race. But Leclerc did have a damaged chassis. The weekend looked particularly grim on Saturday due to the poor performance in qualifying, but the team was able to repair that damage, and we saw a pretty good race from both Leclerc and Sainz. I want to talk a little bit more about that virtual safety car that came out on lap 55. So we talked about safety cars last week, but just a reminder, it forces all the drivers to slow down to 40% of their speed and removes the ability of DRS. So the virtual safety car came on lap 55, just 2 laps shy of the end of the race. And at that point, we were going back and forth between Hamilton and Verstappen for who was going to take fastest lap. The virtual safety car ended right before Max Verstappen could cross the line. So he had a full lap under green conditions that allowed him to steal the fastest lap from Hamilton. And Hamilton was unable to even put up a time for another fastest lap because he was already past the line when the virtual safety car ended. So Max Verstappen won me a little money this weekend by taking home that fastest lap. The virtual safety car also prevented Perez from getting Alonso and potentially getting on podium, but it most likely, like I mentioned earlier, prevented additional tire punctures. There's no doubt that we would have seen more if all of the drivers on the one stop wouldn't have gotten those 3 additional slower laps on those very worn tires. There was a massive change in the battle for both 3rd and 5th place. Ferrari is now firmly 40 points up from McLaren, and Alpine are now 25 points up from AlphaTauri, as AlphaTauri scored no points this weekend after starting out on the front of the grid. We really thought it was an AlphaTauri weekend. And I think now is the perfect time to bring us into our race rundown with Megan. All right, Megan, let's get into our race breakdown. My first question for you is, a lot of teams struggled on this track. One of them being AlphaTauri, who sits 25 points behind Alpine now. I had money on Pierre finishing on the podium. I obviously lost. So let's just talk about that battle for 5th place.
So I'm tempted to say that it's over for AlphaTauri, because going into this last 3 stint, these tracks, it is clear that AlphaTauri, while they might have the Friday and Saturday pace, they cannot translate that into Sunday. We saw it this weekend, paired with the fact that I think Alpine have it figured out, or at least they have this weekend. But because it is the last 3 races of the season, I think what we saw here is probably going to be what we see in the next 2 races. Everyone is barreling towards the end. I think that it will be an Alpine, especially with the momentum coming off this weekend. We saw Esteban Ocon and Fernando Alonso have a fabulous weekend. Alonso was on the podium. You can see that you could see it and hear it, that this was the momentum changer for them. So I think it might be done for AlphaTauri. I'll call it now. I'm sad about it. I'm not happy about it, but I think it's done.
Yeah, it's definitely this kind of heartbreaking moment a little bit, because Pierre Gasly has just shown us so much consistency this year. Yuki has shown us some glimmers of hope for next year. And I really thought they were going to take the 5th place win, and here we are. I'm going to let you talk more about Alonso, because I think you may have picked him for something else. But again, Ocon did have a great race. He started in 9th, made his way up to 5th, and he did a great job defending. He passed Sainz and Tsunoda after his great start, and then he really did his best to keep Perez at bay. So I would agree with you. I think it was a phenomenal race weekend for them, and I think it's just going to continue for these next 2 races.
And I think, if anything, I'm going to say AlphaTauri is done for the year. I don't think they're going to take 5th. I just don't think Tsunoda's performance is there. I would expect to see another great performance from Pierre Gasly. Maybe.
Of course.
I'm not saying he's done for the year, but I think that AlphaTauri is out for 5th.
I would agree.
Just because, like, mathematically it's going to be very difficult unless Alpine has just a gigantic explosion of performance in the next 2 weekends. But Pierre will have a moment before the end of the year. I'm calling it now, and AlphaTauri's done.
Yeah, we always root for a Pierre moment. I thought our Pierre moment was going to be this weekend. I gambled wrong.
I genuinely, after the start, after the first lap, I was like, it's done. I mean, and he just tumbled. He started on the front of the grid and ended up at one point P11.
And I think a big part of it was pace did not treat them well.
No.
They had no pace this race.
They had it in qualifiers, but they did not have it in the race.
Yeah, at all.
He literally, let me repeat that, because that just blows my mind. He started P2 and ended P11. I was like, this is it. It's a podium. We're here. We're doing it. I was like, how amazing will it be if it was a Hamilton, Gasly, Verstappen podium? And we weren't even 15 seconds in, and I was like, well, there it goes.
There it goes. Yeah, the second Al got in front of him, I was like, oh, I think that's over. And I'm like, oh, yeah. I mean, it was like, I've lost that bet immediately.
I also had this disgusting thought. Disgusting. I felt dirty after I had the thought. When Pierre ran wide so Max could get around him, I was like, ooh, was someone at Red Bull doing a prayer circle, but a reverse prayer circle, Ouija boarding for Pierre Gasly to get out of Max's way?
I think Pierre was probably like, I'm feeling the bad juju and I need to get out of the way.
He was feeling the force from Helmut Marko. And George Lucas was there this weekend, so I feel like that's a timely statement. He was feeling Helmut Marko's bad vibes. And I've decided I know who Helmut Marko reminds me of this weekend. I had the moment. I saw George Lucas, and I was like, Senator Palpatine.
Oh, yeah. Great comparison. Great comparison.
This is it. I'm going to now, pull up a picture, and oh my gosh, I'm going to pull up a picture of the two of them and put them side by side now.
I love that. I think that'll be great for us.
Yeah, I'm just confirming. Yes, they do look alike. Okay.
Oh, yeah. The second you said that, I was like, well, I know it's going to be from Star Wars because George Lucas. And then I was running through all the bad guys, and I'm like, it's got to be. There's no other choice.
They are the same person. They might, in fact, be the same person.
Wild
comparison. Okay.
Wild if Helmut Marko wasn't acting one day, and we just never knew.
I mean, is that how they got George Lucas there? But George Lucas was there with Mercedes. So maybe they had a falling out.
Maybe they're...
I'm a genius.
Star Wars does have a lot of fallouts with their characters. I mean, so.
There we go. Treatment. Helmut Marko was Senator Palpatine. George Lucas and him had a fallout. He ended up at Red Bull Racing. Now that we've had our jokes, I genuinely we have to acknowledge and we have to talk about this. And I think it's important that we do it in this setting instead of just giving the facts on it. But going into Qatar, there were a lot of questions, a lot of commentary from drivers, from Formula One on the choices of race venues. Qatar and up next, Saudi Arabia are known for their human rights violations. So Qatar is known for their systematic mistreatment of migrant workers, specifically in the news right now about the FIFA World Cup stadium, lack of being paid, overworking. Qatar is also known for their massive curbing of free speech, questionable tactics in terms of women's rights. We also have Saudi Arabia, their crackdown on human rights advocates, and the notorious murder of Journal Jamal Khashoggi. So, knowing all of this, Katie, should we be going to these countries? Should we be going to these venues? Should we be giving these countries the money and economic revenue.
Yeah. Megan and I have talked a lot about this past week. And it's this difficult conversation to have, and it's a difficult question to ask, because on one side of it, we've seen Formula One speak out, specifically Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel speak out on a lot of human rights issues. We had this whole "we race as one" marketing, branding movement come out of Formula One. But here we are in countries where humans are not treated properly, and there hasn't been enough from Formula One itself as an entity to give me good reason that we should be racing there, because we're not doing anything about it.
I mean, Stefano Domenicali literally is like, oh, we go to these places and we raise awareness for the issues.
How?
No, I'm sorry. The only people raising awareness are the drivers. And in fact, Lewis Hamilton and Sebastian Vettel.
Yeah, the two of them. 2 out of your 20 are actively speaking out against things, are actively passionate about things. And I'm not saying that every single driver needs to come out here and make a stand, but
it needs to be bigger.
It needs to be bigger. It needs to be more than racing. Because if that's what you're going to run on, and if that's what you're going to try to support and try to carry through, then you need to be doing something about it.
It is actually, I know, and deep down I have to believe that all 20 drivers and the majority of the people in the paddock are very critical of these countries and are not in support of any of these laws, legislation, rules, regulations, whatever word you want to go with. I believe that. But it needs to be bigger than the 2 of them. I mean, what they're doing is amazing.
Yeah.
Like, shout out to both of them. Like, it is incredible. The helmets this weekend.
The shoes, the shirts, the conversations, everything that they're starting
is incredible.
They're starting the conversation, and they've literally, laid this platform for F1 to finish the conversation and really do something about it. And
I feel like it's F1 letting us down.
There's no presence. Yeah, it's definitely F1 letting us down.
And so that brings me back to the point, should we be racing at these venues? I mean, if we are going to race at these venues, we need to take the stance that Lewis Hamilton has. We go to these places to raise awareness, and it is our responsibility, because we are bringing the money to them, to do something about it.
And we haven't seen that, so I think my future answer is no, we should not continue adding more of these tracks on. Not until they can prove that they're making a difference at the tracks that they've already said yes to. Because we're going back to Qatar for 10 years.
Exactly. And I get Formula One isn't powerful enough to change the legislation in a country. But at the very least, if they are going to build a new track in Qatar, which is what the plan is, we'll never go back to this track. We won't be there next year because of the FIFA World Cup. If the plan is to have a new track in 2023, it's Formula One's responsibility to make sure that track is built ethically.
100%. No question about that.
Because it is not right of Formula One to condone the act of sports washing, of these countries to have the ability to get these spectacles, to get these massive boons in entertainment, these massive, boons in international presence, awareness. But it is all a distraction for what is actually happening in that country on an everyday basis, and that is fucked up.
Yeah, and it's the same goes with the Olympics and with FIFA. With every single sports body, they have to be making a stance on what is right and what is wrong. And if they're not, that's when I lose credit for them. I lose any hope in these organizations, because you're not thinking about the people who are there to view the sport.
Correct. And by the way, for anybody who listens to this and is like, you're super critical of what's happening there, but what about other places? I am not happy with what happened in Turkey. I don't think that we should be going there if there's systemic LGBTQ plus rights violations. I am questioning if we should even go to Austin. I think every
we're
country...
questioning every single race in every single track. It just so happens that these two are brand new to the calendar, and
they're starting another conversation.
They're starting another huge conversation.
This is a massive issue, and I think this will only continue to get worse if we do not see improvements. The conversation...
I completely agree.
Conversation changing, and that conversation being one that Formula One is actively engaged with. Not just the CEO being like, we go there to bring awareness. No, you go there because they have money. You go there because they have money.
Yeah, cash is king. Cash is king.
Lots of it. Cash is king. Cash is king.
Okay. Megan, I'm going to bring us back to the race a little. Because we have something huge to talk about, and it's those little white triangles in the green curbs that basically caused havoc this weekend. We had so many punctures, and so my question is, are the tires the real loser of the race?
Is it really the tires?
I think it's the track
itself is rough. I mean, it legitimately damaged 2 vehicles. It damaged... 2 chassis.
Charles Leclerc and Mazepin, chassis done. They completely rebuilt both of those cars because of the curve.
Which is insane to think that they had to do that because they've now not been back to home base in 3 races. Both of these teams are nowhere near Qatar. So it's not like you can be like, oh, let me Amazon a new chassis to me. So ridiculous that this track just ate the vehicles. It ate the tires. And truthfully, I think we would have seen a lot more. That's what I was saying. When we saw that, when that virtual safety car happened, I was like, well, at least the Ferrari's tires are safe now. That was my first thought. Because neither of them had pitted.
Well, I'm going to talk about him a little bit later, but Valtteri was the one who basically, with his puncture, warned everyone, like, oh, shit. Tires aren't great here. It's like, were we missing something? Like, I feel like there was this huge miscommunication between Pirelli and all of the teams who didn't listen to them.
No, I don't think it was a miscommunication. I just think the teams were like, fuck it. Whatever. We're going to try it anyway. And I'm like, that's dumb. That's dumb. It was dumb because it cost, granted, okay, like, whatever. Williams wasn't doing so hot, so whatever. But I mean, it was unnecessary. Latifi's unnecessary. Lando Norris, he had to pit again.
Yeah.
I mean, well, he should have pitted again, but he had to pit under, like, unstrategic circumstances.
Right, because they thought something was wrong, and then they did later confirm that it was a puncture. So it was Valtteri, Lando, George, Nicholas. Am I missing anyone else?
No, those are the people that, like, actually had the punctures. But again, we would have seen more. If there had, like, the virtual safety car saved Ferrari's race.
Yeah, blessing.
It probably also saved the Alpine's race. Because at that point, Fernando Alonso had only done 1 pit stop. They were worried about his tires. They had warned him, I think on lap, like, 48. It was, like, lap 48, maybe lap 50. They had warned him to stay off the curbs. Because if Checo had caught him and they had been going wheel to wheel, and in the second to last lap with shit tires,
yeah, Checo would
have been his race.
Yep, that would have been over.
So yeah, I guess like
those. And I feel like we all knew this going. Again, I'm gonna bring this up because I'm kind of harping on it, but like that left front tire, like we all knew it was gonna be running over those curbs constantly. So I don't know. I just feel like teams are like, it's going to be fine. And the track, maybe not the tires were the loser, but the track was the winner.
I mean, the track literally, like, devoured them.
Devoured.
I thought it was interesting. At some point they said, I don't remember who said it on Sky Sports, and I hate the fact that I'm saying that they said something. I actually had 2 moments where I was like, that was kind of a funny take. They were just talking about how the motorcycle wheels could just, like, go over those curbs. And I was like, oh, it seems so casual when they talk about it in terms of motorcycles, but here we are with, like, $1 million car that's had a chassis damage. They're like, motorcycles can do it? Like, Formula 1 cars. I was like, what is happening?
I'm like, they're 2 completely separate things.
Two totally different things. But I think what's interesting is that this whole conversation about tires, honestly, the next couple of days will be fascinating to see what comes out about these tires. Because Pirelli is kind of like, okay, we know that they were quite worn, close to 100%. We know that there were cuts in them. Did those cuts happen before or after the loss of pressure? There's a lot of questions around what actually happened. We do know the fact that they were just worn. I think at the end of the day, granted, I'm not like an engineering mechanic at all. I do think at the end of the day, they're going to be like, they were just pushed too close to the limit. They were so worn down that when they hit a curb, that big impact, that high energy impact just caused the tire to falter.
Yeah. And it's just too early after the race. They're still waiting on some of the data from the teams to really understand what's going on. But I think what they're going to find is that the curbs were eating them up, and that's that. It's a place where a two-stop is required.
And it doesn't matter because we're never going back.
Hopefully.
They'll build a new track.
Yeah, but if for some reason that doesn't happen or it's delayed or whatever, it's going to be a very interesting time here again.
Nah, we can skip it. Okay, we're going to bring it back to something just as ridiculous as the lack of listening to Pirelli is Christian Horner, Katie. So, after the race, Horner was sent to the stewards over a pre-race comment about a rogue marshal, specifically saying, I think it's just a rogue marshal that stuck a flag out and he hasn't been instructed by the FIA. They've got to have control of their marshals. It's as simple as that. Thoughts? Was this necessary? Was this unnecessary?
And this was referring to the double yellow flag that Max supposedly ignored during qualies.
He did. He got a 5 grid penalty.
Correct. I mean, I don't know. This man opens his mouth and I have no idea what's ever going to come out of it. And I'm not surprised by a statement like this.
I think he's funny.
He puts blame on everyone except Red Bull themselves. This whole season, he's been doing that.
I mean, the dude's funny. Like, his statements were funny. This weekend, he was funny. I'm not pointing at cameras and cussing. Like, okay, you're funny. But you're a team principal. Like,
have some class.
You're not a comedian. Have some freaking class, dude. And then to go to the stewards and be like, it was the pressures of the competition. I'm really sorry and meant no offense. You've been in this industry for years. And you didn't think when you spoke? Like, that's a lie.
Yeah. He's just trying to get out of it. It's like when we go to the principal's office and we say, oh, yeah, it was a mistake. I didn't mean to do that. Like, obviously you said it. Obviously you were having those thoughts.
Yes, thank you to the stewards for giving him an official warning. But the fact that they even put on paper that he said that he meant no offense, I was like, that in itself is offensive.
Yeah.
You go hang out with Senator Palpatine, a little more Christian. Like, leave us alone.
Never would I ever rush the end of a season, but I am so excited to figure out what happens at the end of the season and to have a break from Christian Horner. I don't want to break from racing. I want to break from this man because he's causing stress on my heart.
Yes.
Like, that's been my whole season with this man, and so I honestly cannot wait to have a break for him, and I hope we come back next year and he's got his
mouth sewn shut.
He's got his head out of his ass, honestly.
Honestly, I'm just excited for February because I can't wait to see the pictures of him at the International Stewards Program. I can't even say that without, like, dying of laughter. Like, that's ridiculous. Oh, yeah, I apologize. I'll go to a stewards program. That's literally he's going to say something
cherry on top.
He's going to say something next weekend, and they're going to censure him again, and it's going to be way funnier.
Yeah, 2 races left. Christian Horner's off his rocker. Let's see what happens.
He's definitely under pressure. Or, I don't know, the bad forces with him with Senator Palpatine.
Too much bad juju next to him.
Okay, so I think this is good. That's a good point. We can move into my next question. So regardless of who wins this year, Max or Lewis, there are 8 points separating the two of them. We have 2 races left. I'm predicting that we go into Abu Dhabi tied. Statistically possible. In fact, all Lewis Hamilton needs to do is get first place in the fastest lap next weekend. Or, yeah, that's the only mathematically possible way of doing it. But do we, regardless of who wins, do we get another one of these epic battles next year?
Absolutely. Absolutely. I'm calling it now, like, because think about it. If Max loses, if Red Bull loses, they're coming back hot next year. That's all I've got to say.
I don't even want to.
We're not even going to talk about what they're going to comment on, but they're going to come back. And then if Mercedes loses, that's the end of their 7-time world champion streak. So they're coming back hot. Like, no matter who loses, next year's going to be twice as bad as it was this year. Because then people are going to have something to prove. Same with McLaren versus Ferrari. Same with AlphaTauri versus Alpine. Like, and then we've got the whole mix of new cars and a budget cut even further. So who knows where everybody's going to stand. I never thought this season would go the way it went. Like, this is the most exciting season I have seen to date. This is probably one of the most exciting seasons that Formula One has had in the hybrid era. And next year, we're just going to mix it all up again and with a brand new car, with brand new things. And we're going to have, I think we're going to have even more battles next year. I think it's going to get dicey.
Well, I think what'll be cool about next year is that we might have, like a Ferrari actually scrapping with Red Bull and Mercedes. So then it will be, Christian Horner can't just hate Mercedes. He's going to have to hate Ferrari too. And, what stupid shit is he going to say then? Like, come on.
Yeah.
I'm genuinely scared if Max doesn't win this. I mean, if it's not clear, I think Lewis should win this year because I think Max and Christian are little whiny babies. I'm not saying that Max isn't a great driver, but I'm just saying he and Christian are on the side of darkness right now. They've gone to the dark side. But what is going to happen if Max loses? Like, what will happen?
What will be said? What will be said? And I would agree with you. I obviously want Lewis to win. Like, I'm sorry. But I will say, I think this is the first year Max's driving has earned him the right to win the title.
Absolutely.
His actions and Red Bull's attitude in general has not given them I think their attitude in general is keeping them from winning.
Correct. Full stop.
And that's that. That's how I feel about that. So at the end of it, I think Lewis Hamilton's going to come out on top. And probably Mercedes as well. Unless Valtteri continues to have issues, but
that's a whole nother situation.
That's not. But yeah, next year's going to be great. I hope we have 4 teams battling for 1-2s. I hope McLaren gets up there. I don't know if that's possible with what we've seen, but again,
I mean, they'll have a new car
next year. New car next year for everyone.
It's going to be amazing.
What a leveler. It is just, I hope it just levels the playing field. I hope we see Haas up there. I hope it is a whole new sport next year in all the best ways.
We'll see.
Okay, I'll bring you to my last question. Which, again, we have to talk about this. I know we don't want to. I asked it last week. But what the hell is going on with McLaren? Have they just tumbled and that's that for the season?
So I'm just going to decide to pair this with my loser because I think it just makes sense for me to say all of my thoughts in one fell go. Yeah, they suck right now. Full stop, they suck. This weekend was just the unfortunate cherry on top of this triple header. This triple header where they're leaving it with having only scored 4 points. And all of those points came from Lando Norris. Daniel Ricciardo has not scored a point in the triple header. Excuse me? What? And I think what's so difficult about this is we the fans, McLaren, were coming off the high of the Monza win to then just hit this low point right here. I mean, so Lando Norris this weekend, let's talk about Qatar in isolation now that I've just railed about how shitty they've been. So Lando Norris in this race, he started P4, He ended P9, which just disgusting. Granted, that was because of a puncture, but again, that was because McLaren hadn't thought their strategy through and had the issue with the puncture, had the issue with the tires. I'm sorry, I misspoke there. That is after he has had 2 P10 places in Brazil and in Mexico. Yuck.
Yeah.
That's my statement.
They're not showing me anything.
Nothing. So let's look at Daniel Ricciardo. This was a total McLaren blunder here. So after the race, Daniel Ricciardo in his interview admits that on the first lap, he was getting a fuel warning. McLaren told him to conserve fuel. So he's starting the race being like, will I eat? I don't even know if I can make it. So I'm going to conserve as much fuel as I possibly can. To then find out that it was a wrong sensor. And then McLaren was like, it was wrong, pushed like hell. And at that point, Daniel Ricciardo's like, what? You've already taken me out. You took me out of the race lap 1. How they had the terribly incorrect information to then put it on Daniel Ricciardo's shoulders to be like, fight like hell. He's like, that's not fair. That's a McLaren issue. They've got to get their shit together. That's something they need to figure out. Daniel said also in that interview that they're going to get on the Sims and focus on Saudi Arabia. Yeah, you should probably forget about this triple header. Just like throw this one in the dumpster and move on.
Yeah, move on.
But it's just abysmal. I can't even say words. This is just disgusting. Especially because I had such high hopes for them.
Yeah, and I mean, as McLaren fans, you never want to see your team tumble.
I'm so emotional about it.
It's been a hard 3 weeks. I've been trying to figure out why I've been kind of achy in my heart. And it's like, oh, I know, because McLaren's not giving me anything.
McLaren, you're literally...
Boys, get out there.
You are adding to my seasonal affective disorder. You are making me sad.
Sad. Oh, I love it. Okay, so should I hop into my loser, since we're talking about losers?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay, my loser of the race is Valtteri. I don't know what the hell happened there, but we're going to talk about it because he qualified 3rd. He received that 3rd place grid penalty. I said, oh, no worries. Valtteri will be fine. Well, he found himself in 11th at the start of the race, and this is actually the 3rd race in a row that he's lost positions in lap 1. So I'm like, okay, here we are again with a little blunder. Toto literally came on the radio and was like, hey, we need to get these cars in front of you. If you forgot, we're racing to win a championship.
Could you start being a race car driver, Valtteri?
Could you, turn it on? Are you off?
Skedaddle, let's get on with it.
Let's get after it. And we saw a little hope for him. He sat in P4, P3 for a little. And then we had a puncture in lap 33. And he ran wide into the gravel, brought all these rocks onto the track. We had a yellow flag. He makes it back in. He pits. It was actually a phenomenal pit stop for a front wing change as well. So I was like, okay, we're good. We got it. Come on, Valtteri. I'm always cheering for him. Always. And then he retired. And that was that. He just retired. And around lap 50... Go ahead.
He literally said that it was just a normal day at the office for him. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
What do you mean it was a normal day?
I'm sorry.
We're racing for a championship, and those points are vital. So, huge points lost for Mercedes. You've got Red Bull now just 5 points behind them in the championship. So, he's my loser for the day.
Fair enough. That's all I have to say. He deserves to be a loser, just like Daniel Ricciardo. Wait, no, I'm sorry. I take that back. Just like McLaren. Moving on. It wasn't Daniel Ricciardo's fault this weekend. Okay, let's turn to happier thoughts. And my happy thought is my winner. Fernando freaking Alonso. 7 years. It took the man 7 years, and he is back on the podium. He was driver of the day, and it was just unbelievable. Unbelievable to see him happy. He managed it on a one-step strategy. Still pissed at Alpine for that, but Alonso made it work. And honestly, I thought the most wholesome and like just the happiest quote of the weekend was when he was like, unbelievable, 7 years. Finally, we got it. Honestly, I thought we'd be leading after lap 1. On the red tire, I wanted to have a go at Lewis. I read it and I was like, I'm laughing reading it. I shouldn't be laughing. But I was so happy when I read it. It was like, that is so cool to see a former champion wanting to be back in the fight with Lewis. Like, I was a little worried when he came out of retirement if he'd be like a little sad and sleepy and like not really aggressive, but he is here. And the fact that he wanted to have a go at Lewis is amazing.
I think he's back.
It's just such a...
He's back now more than ever. I'm very excited to see the end of this season. I'm very excited to see him next season. Because you're right. I mean, when he did come out of retirement, I was also worried about the sleepiness.
But no, he was great. I mean, he's had a great year. He is currently leading the Old Man's Club. I'm sorry, the cryptocurrency.com overtaking award with 116 overtakes. I mean, it is the Old Man's Club. It's literally Fernando Alonso with 116, Vettel with 115, and Raikkonen with 115. The Old Man's Club. I love it.
The vets.
I love it, but... no, it was good to see. It was fun to see. He was so happy on the podium. It was just good. He won this race. Alpine had a great race. I don't know. It was wonderful. That's all I have to say. I'm too happy to talk about it more.
She's beaming. She's absolutely beaming.
Which is so funny because I don't actually really like Fernando Alonso all that much. But after this weekend, I was like, he's so happy.
I mean, anytime you see a champion get back up there after a long time, or any driver get back up there, anytime you see a driver with their first win, you can't help but you just feel it in your heart when you're a true fan, because you're out there supporting them and they are just incredible people. So phenomenal job by Alonso. Okay, I'm going to talk about my winner, my quick winner. It's Red Bull. They had a great race in totality. You've got Max finishing second. You've got Checo finishing fourth. It was solid points for the team. It's what they need in this championship. And Checo actually, I think, is our honorable mention of the day.
Absolutely.
He just had a great race. Tons of overtakes, great defending, really made his way through the grid. He has found his stride within Red Bull, and I love that for him. I love him on the Red Bull team. I was nervous when he joined. I love him on Red Bull.
No, I hands down agree that Sergio Perez should be the honorable mention. Sky Sports, I think, again, I'm going to say something good about them. But they had the quote that just like summed up Perez's performance. I don't remember which one said it, but they said Perez must think that there's 30 cars out there, as he's just like overtaking after overtaking after overtake. It was just cool to see. It was fun to watch. My favorite one was his battle with Alonso on lap 29. They went wheel to wheel. It was cool to watch Sergio Perez in his element, doing really well, making his way after a horrible qualifying performance where he was out at Q2. He deserves the win. I mean, part of me is like, should kind of wish we could have seen it at the end as well. You know, a little Checo, a little Alonso scuffle into the end would have been cool. But virtual safety car and all.
Yeah. All in all, great race. Very excited for our last two.
Honestly, it ended up being a lot better than I thought it was going to be.
I would agree. I was nervous going into this. Anytime you have a new track, but specifically because this one was built for MotoGP and we only had one DRS zone, I was just like, I was prepared for it to be a boring race. Megan and I texted each other halfway through, and I said, like, this isn't that bad. And she was like, yeah, lots of overtakes, decent entertainment. I'm intrigued by this. So
genuinely, we were concerned going into this weekend that we would not even have enough things to say here.
Yeah. I'll be intrigued about next weekend too.
Next weekend will be interesting, and I genuinely, as we're talking about next weekend, aka Saudi Arabia, I ignored the fact that it's a bye week. 2 people have literally just texted me that they were listening to their morning podcast and there was talk about the Justin Bieber controversy in the Saudi Formula 1 performance. Jamal Khashoggi's fiance is calling on Justin Bieber to cancel his performance. So because of the controversy. So
yeah.
Clearly, people outside of the F1 community are going to get pulled into this, which I'm glad they're going to. Maybe we'll get some more people to watch a race. Maybe we'll start the conversation. So I'll be interested to see how it goes.
Next weekend is not a race weekend. It is Thanksgiving, so happy early Thanksgiving. But in general, it is a much needed break for all of us fans, but also the drivers and teams who have traversed 3 continents and 3 countries in just 3 weeks. In 2 weeks, we will be headed to Saudi Arabia at the Jeddah Corniche circuit for the penultimate round of the 2021 season. Check back next Tuesday for a full episode of Dirty Driving, where Megan and I will discuss how we think the season will end and maybe even place a bet on it.
Thank you so much for listening to another episode. Don't forget to subscribe and follow us at Dirty Driving Pod on Twitter and Instagram.
Until next time, stay dirty.